change that to 200. It also reconfigures not only the carcassing, but it also reconfigures the internal parts automatically for you. So this is the sort of unit that you'd like to see constructing. This will be covered in my next webinar, how we actually achieve that. I think it's I believe it's in about 2 weeks' time. But it's going to be covered how we can actually achieve that. We're going to go through step by step on how we do it, how we shape the cabinet, how we can then reconfigure selecting these edges as to be which size we want with the ends, with the backs, with their faces. And then we'll also go through actually assigning the constraints and the attributes to give us this functional unit. The next one I got to show you is a center cutout unit. Now, this is one which is a bit more advanced, as this one actually has equations in it, which allows us to keep this cutout slap bang in the center of this unit. So if I go into this unit now, what you'll be able to see again is we've got cut depth and cut width. So now we've actually got 2 values we can input, and I haven't got choices. We can actually put in what we want. So I can now actually go in and say, I want to change the depth to 250 mil. It'll push that out 250 mil. And as a classic with cabinet vision, all the machining is automatically calculated. It applies the connections where it can, down to the rules of our connections. And I could then change that to 500 and it will shift it out in both ways. So this one's a little bit more advanced, not much more advanced, but a little bit more advanced, as we've got some equations in there and to keep this on center. But it's little things like this, again, that can really further your sort of perspective of cabinet vision and really put a more in-depth value into the software. If you can create units like this, if you're doing units like this regularly, this can be a real asset to you. Be able to save this unit away with all the attributes assigned, call it back in, change some sizes, maybe change the construction method, change the doors. You can resend that out to your next job. A lot quicker than having to reshape it every single time. The third unit I have got for you is a spice rack I've built. So to give this sort of perspective that, you know, cabinet vision isn't all cabinets, we can do quite a lot more work in there. It's just about having that perspective of mind. If I go into the spice rack, you see I've got a nice little spice rack here with the machining applied. We've got some bars running through it. If I just change the render so you can sort of see. But again, I've got an awful lot of attributes here. So it's not just assigning dimensions. We can also do angles and radiuses. So for example, I've got end radius here. I can choose either 25 or 50. If I pick 25, change the end radiuses to 25. I could then change the depth to 150. I could change the height to 400, and I could change the width to 250. And just like that, we've reconfigured that unit. So again, if you're doing a lot of work like this, it can speed you up massively. An awful lot of time can be saved doing this sort of stuff. The last unit I've got to show you is significantly more advanced, but this is a real telltale as the sort of power that cabinet vision can offer you with the use of attributes, constraints, and calling in sub-assemblies, etc. So this is a pantry unit I've built with the spice racks applied. So if I drop this one on here, and I straight away looking at this, if I click on the cabinet, I can see all my attributes. So it's not just inside the cabinet. If you click on that cabinet from the plan view in the room level, you can still assign the attributes. So for example, I've constrained the size to 800, 1200, and 1000. If I change it to 1200, these spice racks here will always remain centralized to the doors. Even if I change it back to 800, they will remain centralized to the doors. It's a nice little one to show. But if I go into the unit itself, and I just change the render to wire mode, and we look at the end view, you can see all the attributes I've got. So again, 3 holes for adjustable shelves. I've assigned that attribute to every single cabinet in my library of cabinets, so it'll work for everything. Changes my adjustable shelves. But you'll see here I've got spice rack end rad. Again, I can change the end radius to what I wish it to be, of the 25 and 50. But watch what happens when I change the spice rack depth to 250. It's pushing these shelves back and the partition. So I've applied that into the cabinet. I've orientated it. I've assigned the parametric values to position my spice racks where I need them to be. And what I've also done is use them to be able to control where my shelf positions are. But that's a guaranteed gap of 50 mil there. I've also added an attribute which can actually change that. We could have a 10 mil gap if we wanted to, and it will push them forward. But again, if I change the depth back to 200, it will keep that at 10 mil. This is to really show the sort of power of these parametrics in cabinet vision and how we're going to go through creating something like this. In the beginner's user guide, the cabinet we're going to make is the corner unit. In the advanced user guide, we're going to go through creating this pantry unit and having the shelves parametric. We're not going to add in the spice racks. I will do a separate little video for the stuff that we haven't covered. That will be sent out to you guys after the webinars have been completed in, I think, about 4 weeks' time, which will actually show you how I achieved adding the parametrics to the spice rack, adding the spice rack in, stuff like that. Because it's not just cabinetry we can make parametric, it's also machining. So if you add in certain machining attributes that you wish, you can make them parametric to certain parts. A good example of this is on my spice rack. If I just call that back in, on my spice rack actually is the machining into these sidewalls. Obviously, I've got machining going into the ball nose, and I've also got machining going into the end panel. They are parametric. If I stretch the top, the height of the cabinet to 400, it all remains in orientation because I've added parametric values. You can just about see the gap of where they become separate there. So it's not just machining. It's not just it's not just cabinetry. It's also machining. That can also be classed as parametric. We can add attributes to the positions and also the depths. I've actually got attributes on this drilling here to always be the material thickness. That material thickness changed to 22. That bore in there would extend through the part. So it's clever things like that we're going to go through, which will hopefully put some more value in the software for you if you can do some more complicated things. As I said, to do the majority of what I'm going to do, you will need the shaping module. If you've got it, fantastic. I imagine most of you probably have who've got cabinet vision already. For those of you who haven't, it may be worth looking at if it's something that you're looking at doing and you think this could be significantly speeding your business up, then it's definitely worth the while. But a nice thing that was introduced in 2023 release for cabinet vision, for those of you who've got cabinet vision already, most of you will probably with CNC have the S2M center. This allows us to output our cabinetry with tool pathing and the NC code through the screen to machine center. You can do it on a cabinet basis, on a job basis, however which you like to work with. With the new introduction of the module X2AC in 2023 release cabinet vision, what that allows us to do is actually link both cabinet vision and Alphacam together. So for those of you again who are unaware, the S2M center runs an older version of Alphacam in the background, which programs all the parts for you. You don't see it, it does it for you. I think you just see the end product of what the nested sheets, etc. look like. With the introduction of the X2AC module, this essentially allows us to bypass the S2M center and allows us to send these files formatted into Alphacam. Now, the advantage of this is you get the value of both products. For example, if you're a bespoke joinery company who mainly does cabinetry, but also does things like handrails, stuff like that, Alphacam is the perfect product for your handrails and doing your more complicated geometries with the ability to import solid models and 2D CAD files. With cabinet vision, it's the perfect cabinetry solution for doing anything along those lines. So it gives you the flexibility of both products. Seamless link. The link is only from cabinet vision to Alphacam. The link isn't universal, it's just one way. Obviously, if you look at it in the perspective of using cabinet vision to design, Alphacam is for your manufacture. That's how it's sort of been designed. So to do this, I'm going to bring in a unit that we're going to design in one of our next webinars. I'll bring in this base unit here. And to do this, if I go into the unit, again, you can do this from room level if you want to, but I only want to send this unit to Alphacam. And I go to the reports tab. If you have the X2AC module available on your license, you will have this button here, which is send to Alphacam. If I click that, it will ask me where I want to put the files. I'm just going to stash them on my desktop for now. And now this bit you won't see, and I apologize for that, it's because it's on my main monitor, which is a slightly different monitor. But what it's going to do is essentially just send all those files to Alphacam, formatted, ready for us to automate the machining process through Alphacam itself, as opposed to going through the S2M center. I can see it's doing it now. It's going to send everything there. Perfect. So if I just now change my screen to monitor 1, you should now be able to see my Alphacam screen. So Alphacam, again, it's had a bit of a facelift from 2023. It's had, it looks a bit more modern, so it looks a bit different. You'll notice straight away for you guys who use Alphacam or have looked at Alphacam in the past, the project manager pages are now assigned by default to left-hand side. You can change the position back to the bottom if you wanted to. You put them on the right or the top. I prefer them here. So those files in from Cabinet Vision. If I go to File Open, I go onto my desktop. You can see here we've got a folder which is dated and time-stamped, which is the job from Cabinet Vision. And you'll see we've got all of these parts imported from Cabinet Vision. The toolpaths in Cabinet Vision are actually used to create the geometries in Alphacam. So it's quite a clever process. So if I go down and I pick a door, for example, if I pick, let's have a look what ones we got. If I pick that door there, for example, it's quite a nice one to see because straight away, my pocket style shaker doors, which are like the fake pocket style of an MDF door, it's input all the geometry that I've used in Cabinet Vision as from the toolpaths to create this geometry. And those of you who are used to working with 2D geometry, you'd notice that this is 3D. It's the first thing you probably spot. And you're probably thinking, how on earth is that three-dimensional? Well, technically it's not. Technically it's still 2D. Alphacam, the way we automate machining is in the 3D tab, you'll notice the Set Geometry Z Levels button. And I'll demonstrate to you what this actually does in a moment and how we can automate it. But say I wanted to toolpath this, the correct procedure, sort of not say correct procedure, but probably the best procedure for doing a job part-to-part basis in Alphacam itself. If I go to machine, I could apply an auto style, which is toolpaths that I have saved away. I could then use, if I go up into my documents, Alphacam, Lycom Dirt, styles, you'll see I have a style down here, X2AC pocket shaker. If I double click on that one, what we'll see in a moment is this whole job toolpath. You can see that, oh, there we go. If I go to the operations, you see it's applied all the operations. I could go down, it'll tell you exactly which one, which is doing what. And you'll see straight away, we've got corner relief cutting and our pocketing cycle using our Alphacam's intelligence to realize that that material has been wasted away. It's been machined away. We're actually only going to need to take out that little bit. We've also got a chamfering command, which is going to go through, which is a new feature to Alphacam 24, which allows us to actually use existing geometries to create chamfers. And for those of you who've done chamfers in the past in Alphacam, you know it could have been a little bit fiddly at times. This new chamfering command takes the guesswork out of that. You define your tool exactly how it would be. And then what you do is you input, if I just open the toolpath so you can sort of see, what you actually get is, you say the height of the chamfer, so mine's a 45 degrees, so I know those values have got to be even, and how much I want to overcut by. And these values here are all input automatically from the tool, and it will tell you the total depth that it's going to. That will then trace around that geometry there and create a lovely little chamfer for us. So it's another nice new feature, and these are the advantages you get with having both products. You get this flexibility, you've got more toolpath creation options in Alphacam than you do with Cabinet Vision, with the S2M center. So it's a nice, real seamless link between the two. As I said, to demonstrate to you how this sort of works, if I delete, or I'll hide all these toolpaths for now. If I select a tool, in fact, actually, I'll just use this tool here. If I use this tool here, I go in to do a rough and finish cycle and use vertical machining. That's fine for now. You see in the level and cuts, it asks me where the top of the material is, where the bottom is. So I'm going to say minus, I believe that's 18 mil. Machining data, if I want some stock to be left, I can, and I can also apply a lead in, lead out that I've saved away. If I apply that to that geometry, it's going to give me this nice sloping lead in straight to the bottom of the geometry. But what I could then do is right click, save as new style, and this will allow me to call this back in. All the toolpath information is saved. I can call this back in and use it where I wish. But that doesn't allow us to automate it because we've set a depth parameter on that toolpath there. With the toolpath that I've got here, what you'll notice is it's got 2 depths of cut. If I go in and edit the operation, we can actually have a look in here and say there is no depth of cut. I'm using the AutoZ function, which when you create a new toolpath, if I just go in and rough and finish, you can see we have AutoZ, and you can see it gives you a nice little graphic, top and bottom geometries. So I'm using the AutoZ function here. If I go in and edit that, there is no depth parameter. It's asking me for the depth of cut, which is actually taken from, it's populated from the tool database. So I've set a depth of cut of 10 mil on this tool. It brings it in automatically. We can override it. We can put it back to 0. We could make it 5 if we wanted to. If I leave that at 10, and it asks me for the Z stock amount, which is saying if you're going full depth, how much do you want to go either past the geometry or above the geometry? So you could either put a plus value in here of 1 mil, that would go to 17 mil. And if I put -1, it would go to 19 mil. So with that in mind, this is how we can automate it. It actually takes the depth from the geometry itself, as opposed to taking it from the toolpath. And it will look something a little like this. If we had doors that were actually supposed to be, say, 24 mil, if I click on that one, or even say 30 mil, with our toolpath, you can see they both highlighted blue because the geometry they're associated to is altered. If I update this bottom one, nothing happens because we've got a parameter of -18. But if I update the top one, it adds an extra 2 slices in there because it's going 10 mil deep at a time. So that is how we can automate it. And the beauty of it is from Cabinet Vision to Alphacam, these parts actually get sent in, formatted, ready for us. We don't have to go through and pick set geometry Z levels, pick that geometry, set it there. The other nice thing that comes in is it comes in on layers. So it actually groups geometries together, which is a really nice feature. So that's how we can sort of start to show the automation off. And we're going to go through on the Alphacam side how we can achieve that. We're going to start off with some simple geometry. We're actually going to do this door here. We're going to draw it. We're then going to create our Z levels, create our layers, and then we're going to create some machining styles. In the advanced user guide, we're going to do the same thing, but what we're going to do is create an auto style. And we're actually going to associate the layers with what we call an auto query, which is going to essentially pick up elements from the geometry and put them onto layers that we associate them to, as opposed to actually drawing them on layers or dragging and dropping them. So we're going to go through the nice simple way, build up to the more advanced way. Hopefully get you guys to speed it up significantly. So that's the sort of CV to AC link in the Cabinet Vision sort of side. The other nice thing that we get with the Cabinet Vision files is we get a CSV file sent over. And this will make a bit more sense slightly later on in the sort of demo. I will go through it again. If I open this CSV file here, what you notice is it sent me every single part in the job. What it's also done is given us the file path location, the quantity is assigned to that part. So if we went into Cabinet Vision, we changed the quantity on that cabinet to 3, it gives the value of 3. What material it's been associated to. If it's a grained material, which obviously you can have it in grain X, grain Y, or free rotation. The part name, which is more for sort of just added information, but it also gives us the assembly it's associated to and the nest. So you can see there when it changes the assembly number in cabinet vision, that changes, and whether the part is a nested part. So it even splits the parts up. So as a good example, on this door here, we'd actually have the hinge boring on the back. So it's given us this file for the top face, but it's also given us a single part file for the back. So it's split the part up. So we know, for example, part outline is the layer it comes in for the primary sort of operations, and you'll have another layer on the other one, which is part outline secondary, which is saying basically we don't need to machine this. This is already done. You've done this in your nest, or you've done this on the saw. This is the bit now that we need to machine. It's just the actual other layer which comes in as part boring. So with Alphacam, as I mentioned earlier about solid models, the other nice thing that we get with Alphacam, again, using the solid module, it's something that it's extra cost option, but again, a lot of you guys probably have seen it or use it and are familiar with solid models, is handling assemblies and multi-body parts. So if I just bring in this assembly model here, drag it in, clear memory, you can see it's bringing in 114 parts. I've got a nice cabinet assembly here, just a simple base unit. It's nothing too sort of strenuous. But what you'll notice here is we've actually got feet on it. We've also got things like hinges, and which you can't see yet, we've actually got all of the hardware inside. So all of the fastenings, connectors. So with this model, there's two ways we could go about it. We could, when we bring the model in, we have assembly options, and we could save each separate body, solid body, sorry, to a separate file, align each body on import, and actually pick an output folder. And what that would do is it would break this model down into all separate .ard files, or depending on what version of Alphacam you're using, but presumably we're using router, it'd be ARD, and all automatically aligned. And what it will do is it will look for the most features on that face, align that as the face up. But we want to try and automate this process. We want to go through how we can automate it. So, and what that would do as well with this assembly is it would also align all of the hardware. We don't want to do that. So what we can do is if I go into Edit, Run Query, and I go into Solids, I've got a Do Not Machine query here. If I run that one for me, what it's going to do is it's actually going to filter through all the parts. And what you'll notice now is I've got a Do Not Machine layer. So if I now go into the solid and turn that off, what you can see is all of the hardware has been filtered through, all of the feet and the hinges. If I then turn that layer off and I turn that layer on, we've now just got the machine ready parts that we want to actually cut on our CNC. This is really to show how it's quite a common thing from design to manufacture, where you'll have a design solid model, which will have all the hardware, feet, etc. in there. But then what they'll do, the designers, to make it easier for the manufacturing guys, is they will take out all of the feet, they take out all the hinges. So you'll have essentially having two models. And quite often as well, they'll even break the model down to separate files. This is to show that with Alphacam, you can have one model. You can have one assembly model or multi-body part, whichever one you're working with. And Alphacam can do all that work for you, which can massively save time on design into manufacture. And that sort of workflow process from design to manufacture can be really speeded up with the use of queries. We can take the solid model name, we can take features from the model. We can say if the model is over this size, delete it. If it's got no features, delete it. Stuff like that. So how would we then go about processing this? Well, this is a big assembly. We don't want to have to process this each part, as I said, with an auto style. It would take us a bit of time. Still be quicker than doing it probably a manual way, but still take a bit of time. Alphacam's Automation Manager module is what we're now going to look at. With Automation Manager, what we can essentially do is fully automate the process of bringing files in. And I'll talk about the solids first. We can bring a solid assembly in. It will break that assembly down. If we've got a do not machine query in there, it will run that on the assembly import, filter through the files. And if I just go into my solid assemblies demo, what you'll see is we've got components and non-machine components. If I toggle the non-machine components down, that is all the hardware. So out of 114 parts, I think we've only got about 7 or 8 that we're working with. These are all the parts that are going to be machined. So he's done that for us. It's broken that model down. So we've just loaded in the assembly, it's broken it down. We're then using the layer mapping setup. Again, that's why layers are important. And as I said, those cabinet vision files come in pre-ready for automation. We can then use the layers. So these are layers I'm using, which are extracted from the geometries, extracted from the models. Materials database, there's 2 ways we can do this. We can actually have our materials database linked to cabinet vision, and I'll show you why that's quite a unique feature in a moment. And then a configuration for all our sort of how we want it to be processed. So you can see again, if I go to assembly handling options, we want to process assemblies, and we also want to run the non-machine parts query. So what we can then do is, if I process that job and hit OK, what it's then going to do is going to bring the parts in, align them, extract the geometries, and apply the toolpaths. And this will run through all the parts. What it will then do is it will nest all the components with the nesting settings that I have added into Alphacam from my preferences. So you can configure your nesting to how you wish. It will then output a list of sheet reports. Again, you don't have to, but it's another option that it runs through. So you can output a list of sheet reports, which will then in turn tell you exactly what parts are in there, the quantity of them, the ID of them. It will give you sheet usage, stuff like that. And then it will also then give us the NC code for all of these parts. So we have then taken the whole CAM process from quite literally the back end of the design process and automated it fully. And this is the sort of thing we're going to do in the more advanced part for the Alphacam side of the webinar in a few weeks' time, is how we can achieve this. We're going to bring in a job from cabinet vision. We're then going to actually set the job up, and we're going to machine it all the way through. And we're going to import it with that CSV file, which is where this comes in the moment. So we'll let this run through. So I'm going to add our parts to the nest. So I believe there's about 7 or 8 of them. That's a little bit out. You have to give it a moment. There we go. So we'll add our parts to the nest. Nice tidy nest. That's our sheets. Now we're exporting our sheet reports and saving the toolpaths from our post processor. So there we go. That's a whole manufacturing process been done automatically from the designing of the cabinet and the units all the way into the CAM system and programming those parts fully. So, and you can see here, gives you process complete. Everything's run through smoothly. We've got part drawings, which is another thing, gives you individual component drawings, nest drawings, which is what this is, the NC files and reports. So if I hit OK, I could then drag this report over so you guys can have a look. You can see a nice graphical view there, giving us our sheet yield and also what parts are in there, quantity of the part index number, stuff like that. And it'll go on to the next sheet. So that's Automation Manager. That is sort of the more advanced side of getting it all set up and getting it working, getting it running. We're going to go through that in the more advanced user guide. But so that CSV file, the reason it's important is because we can import files as a CSV. So if I just go into my CSV import file, you can see I've got a CSV, a DXF version, and a CV to AC one, which is the X to AC module. In your import settings, it's just adding these field names from Excel. So you see, I've got a lot of skip fields in there because a lot of them I don't need, but I'm requiring the file name, the quantity required, the material, and the nested part. So if we then imported that, which we will go through when we do the advanced user guide, you will see that all imported. We'll get this sort of set up linked with that CSV, so you guys can take that away if you decide to use it. And then essentially import the files with all the extra information. So if you've got a job with 4 materials in, it will assign the material to those individual parts, which then means it won't nest them in the wrong material, and it will nest them separately, and you'll have everything done complete. So again, using CSV is very powerful. The other nice thing of Alphacam, and it's a new feature in 2024, if I just come in and I just delete that one at the top. We also get quite advanced machine simulation. And one thing you'll notice here straight away is I've actually added in the Lamello Clamex to these to this model as the connector. We have a macro which any of you can take away with you for Alphacam, which automatically toolpaths Lamello Clamex. It's quite a complex sort of toolpath to create. To create a macro for you guys to take away and use. Extremely powerful. It does 3-axis, 4-axis, oh sorry, 3-axis, sort of 3+2 with a saw, and also 5-axis simultaneous, automatically generated, depending on how you want to machine it, what machine you've got, etc. So it's a nice feature to add in there. However, I've also used something which a lot of you with Alphacam may be unfamiliar to, is the Alphacam production packs. And the Alphacam production packs is something that's going to be covered, that I will be presenting at the user group meetings. So you'll get a bit more information about it then for these guys who are coming along. But essentially what it is a collection of macros. They are extra cost. If I just go to add-ins and macros, we can show you where they are. They are extra cost. They won't appear on your Alphacam system until you've purchased them. What you get is a collection of macros which are developed by our global team to be used around the world. And you see there's 4 segments to this. So you've got 3D objects, which tends to be STLs, solids, surfaces. Automation, which allows us to run any macros from Alphacam inside Automation Manager, which is what I've done here. Production pack geometry, which is for creating geometry. And you see, if I drop it down, these are all the sorts of macros you get. And production pack machining. So there's also machining macros in there. And the macro I've ran, what it's done is scanned the job for grooves, or what you call grooves, for slots of a certain width on a certain layer. It's then projected me a center line across that layer, which I've then applied, and it gives you the layer. You see I've got the Lamello Clamex layer there. That is that green line in the middle. And I've ran that in the background of Automation Manager using the production pack Automation Manager event extender. And what it's done is allowed me to project that line, assign the Clamex macro to that with my machining style I've created from it, and machine the Clamex. It's a really uniform system to achieve. The actual function is create center line. If I open that up and I go into my Lamello Clamex, you can see the groove width is 10. It's looking for it on closed contours. It's going to output it on the Lamello Clamex. And I can actually add that in to the Automation Manager event extender. In the Automation Manager event extender, if I go in, these are all the events that run through Automation Manager. I've added it in before part machining. It then calls in that macro, adds that in, carries on with the Automation Manager process. And you didn't even notice that going through. So it's a seamless process, again, really, really powerful. For those of you who are, again, not too sure with macros, Automation Manager, you can run one custom macro in there. With the event extender, it allows you to run almost an infinite amount of macros in there. So it's extremely powerful. And these aren't just macros from the production packs. These are macros built into Alphacam already. So it allows you to run functionality that's already in Alphacam. Extremely powerful thing. So, as I was saying, with the new feature into Alphacam 2024, we have a new simulator. So if I go to 3D, set materials, I just set it on that one, the 18 mil for the top, 18 mil. And if I then go into the layers tab, I could then call in a machine. These are just generic ones that I've got with Alphacam. Calls in the machine. And what I could then do is go into a solid simulation and I could play that through. And what we'll get to see is a really nice enhanced simulation experience. As you can see, it's going through. I've got it to stop after operation, stop after tool change. If I just bring the feed down, bring the rapid down a little bit, what we'll be able to see is it's actually machining. So it's drilling the holes for the cabineos. It's then going to come in and drill all those holes. And now it's going to come in with our Clamex macro and machine that with the Clamex router 3-axis and machine our lovely little grooves. So it's a nice enhanced machine simulation. What you get is you can see everything running on the left-hand side. There is further development going into this to make it more powerful. So that's something coming in later releases. But you see, you can get stop at collision, will detect collisions. Again, I wouldn't use it as a machinist as my background. I would never use it as a sort of a godsend. NC code verification is the best form of verifying a program, but to give you a nice visual of what's going to happen in the program, see it's all doing what you want, this is perfect. And you will get collisions that you would detect, for example, on 5-axis operations. So you can see it's going to run through that one now. If we just run it all the way through with the rapids up, it's going to run through, do all our Clamexes. I do have one more file to show you, which is for you guys who sort of interested in your 5-axis stuff. And as I said, for sort of like bespoke joinery places that I've sort of been to, they tend to do some quite complex 5-axis work with the cabinetry side as well. To show the Alphacam simulation and what we can do, if I come into file open, I go up from that one into my folder here, programs, simultaneous. I've got a handrail here. If I then call in my machine configuration, which is that one there, it'll call that one in. So to give you a sort of an insight into the power of the sort of new simulator, if I play that, what we'll actually get to see is some really nice 5-axis moves with the head. If I run it through on the 3-axis stuff, come through down the side. So this gives you a really nice visual, and having that extra power in the simulator allows us to achieve that, which is, again, really sort of promotes, I believe, the link between both Cabinet Vision and Alphacam. You get the enhancements in here for doing your more visual machining. You get more practicality with it in the sense that if you have to manually intervene, you can. If there's something more complicated you want to do, you can do it. So it's a nice sort of one to do. It's a nice sort of link to have as well between the two products. So I think it really shows them off quite nicely. And that's what we're going to sort of look to build in to these next few webinars, is going to be us going into Cabinet Vision, designing our sort of cabinetry with our attributes, getting the best out of the parametrics in Cabinet Vision and making it look, you know, nice and snazzy, make it easy for us, then sending that into Alphacam and actually machining it in Alphacam. You can see there nice 5-axis moves the head. So that sort of brings us to the end of this sort of webinar.